Hello, welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. Rob Staton, Robbie Williams here. And we're going to talk about the Seahawks win against the Dallas Cowboys this weekend in the second week of preseason. Plenty to talk about, lots of positives, a couple of negatives as well, but we're going to talk through it all. I'm sure there'll be some other Seahawks topics that we're going to get into. If you want to join in the live chat, feel free. But remember, if you have a question or if you want anything to appear on the screen, then Super Chat is the way to go. That's the way to make sure that you are part of the stream tonight. Robbie, how are you? And what did you think of the Seahawks? They're 2-0.
2-0. Preseason, baby.
The march to
undefeated.
What is it now? 22-0
yeah.
is on.
Yeah. I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. Yeah. For as far as the game goes, man, again, preseason, I can say I think overall I'm pretty excited about watching this offense. I think I said last week that I was looking forward to kind of seeing Jake Bobo play some more and stuff. And the fact that first of all, his first sluggo route was fantastic. And then and the fact that he didn't play at all, I think in the second half or fourth quarter or something like that, I think says a lot to me that he's got an inside track to making the team, and I think that's a really good thing. And with some of the other receivers, I'm just really excited about the offense and just to see what they can do. I think it's going to be a really fun unit to watch. Still have a lot of reservations about that defense, though. A lot of reservations. There's things that concern me. But I think we're in for another kind of fun, exciting year. To be honest, I think this is going to be a little similar to last year, and it's going to be fun seeing some of these younger guys get out there and get after it. And it's good to see Boya Mafe. The raves about him seem to be legit, and he seems to be putting good tape together and playing well. And it's just fun. This is going to be fun. I think I'm in for it. I'm excited about the season.
We'll run through sort of different players and different aspects of the team one by one. You started with Jake Bobo, so we'll go there. I think one of the really good things, Robbie, is when you watch so many college games during a season when I'm doing the blog, and you pick up on players, and it's really good when you are watching the Seahawks when it gets to this stage, because there's a whole bunch of NFL players now and draft picks who I'm never really going to watch again unless they become top NFL players that you can follow through the process, and then they just disappear off onto other teams, and they may be good or they may not be good, whatever. But when you watch UCLA as much as I have done over the last 2 years, for a number of reasons, a couple of years ago, it was because Zach Charbonnet was such an important player for them and was a really intriguing draft prospect, and he didn't declare. It was also to watch Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And then sort of a year later, Jake Bobo comes onto the scene. He joins the team. So then you've got the three of them on offense. I think I watched every UCLA game last year. And to sort of keep watching them and to keep sort of talking about, how good is Charbonnet, how much he looks like a Seahawks player. To talk about Bobo and to qualify it and say, we don't know what the testing numbers are going to be like for Bobo. So we've got to bear that in mind. But for him to play as well as he did last year and to talk about him as much as he did, and then just to see them both in back-to-back plays in this game. So you've got the Bobo sluggo that you were talking about, the stop-and-go route, and he just completely owned that defensive back there, was wide open, easy completion for 28 yards. And then I think on the next play, Robbie, that was when Zach Charbonnet had that huge run. And I'm sort of sat there thinking it almost makes it all worthwhile, all those Saturdays and Sundays of watching all of those games. And trust me, sometimes watching UCLA is not that fun. And, watching them play and sort of seeing all this, to see these two players in back-to-back plays, Robbie, in this preseason game making plays was fantastic. And Bobo, Robbie, he started with the wands. He was making plays with Geno Smith with the wands. And then, like you say, he played quite a bit, but he got the kind of shepherd's crook hook at one point. And for me, he's an absolute lock. It's not even a question. It is not even a question that he is going to be on this roster. He's a lock for the roster as far as I'm concerned. They're going to have to make a difficult decision somewhere. We discussed it last week. Eskridge's suspension will make it a little bit easy for them because he's just going to go on the suspended list. They can carry a receiver. Who knows what's going to happen in the next 6 weeks? Who knows if they even activate Eskridge after his legal issues? But the 6-week suspension buys them a bit of time there, Robbie. But Bobo's going to be on this roster, and then sort of to transition to Charbonnet, I just think he looks so good. He just looks fantastic. Listen, no one's talking about him really. His body is ideal. He's got the perfect frame. He's so quick and powerful and dynamic. And when he burst into that second level, Robbie, when I was watching him there, I was thinking, this guy looks like, there's a special quality to him. You kind of want to temper your expectations because he was playing Dallas as backups. But I'm watching him there and I'm thinking, this guy could be a top 5 running back. He has everything. He has absolutely everything.
Yeah, the way he exploded through that hole too was absolutely impressive, and he runs fast, man, and hard, and it's fun to watch. And I just this is one of the things I'm really excited about with the season is just watching our running backs in general. Because right after that, they showed on the sidelines, they showed Kenneth Walker Jr. and him just chatting and getting all fired up, and just, man, the combination of those two. But then you throw in the fact that you got Kenny McIntosh as the third. This running back crew is fun. It's going to be fun to watch, and I'm excited just to see them run together. And the only downside is who do you start? Who doesn't get enough touches? This is where this is a good problem to have, I feel like.
Just to clarify before we move on, because Tim has asked if I am drinking Coca-Cola in a champagne glass. I am not. No, it's just wine in a wine glass. But basically, I'm not a big drinker at all, and I hardly drink. But there is some wine in the house, so for the last couple of streams, I'm basically using it up. And then next week we're actually going to France. So if you can't go to France and not have a glass of wine. But then when I get back from France, that I will be living like a monk for about 2 or 3 months, and the training will ramp up, and the wine and the wine glass will go back in the cupboard. So unless the Seahawks have a terrible start to the year, then I might have to return to the wine. We'll see. So really good, positivity there. Boya Mafe, Robbie, was a player that everybody's talking about. Everybody is reacting to the way that he's played. We've kind of had an off season where, a training camp where the coaches have constantly brought his name up. They've talked about him, Robbie. They've gone to him all the time. He's a player who's taken a jump. He's a player who has really sort of benefited from what he learned last year to take it into this training camp. And I think if there was anybody, Robbie, who I wanted to hear that from, it was Boya Mafe, because Charles Cross had played a lot, Ken Walker had played a lot, Abe Lucas had played a lot as rookies, and the other high pick that they had from that draft was Boya Mafe. And if you notice, when they were putting the graphics up during the season, they were saying, what a great draft the Seahawks had. Look, they took Charles Cross, they took Ken Walker, they took Tariq Woolen, they got Abe Lucas. No one mentioned Boya Mafe. He just wasn't part of that conversation because he wasn't really contributing. They were playing Bruce Irvin instead for some reason, even though their grades were the same on PFF. So he was kind of like the forgotten man. And I just kept thinking to myself, God, if Mafe could just take a step this year, that draft class looks even better then. And he's got all the tools. And when you're sort of watching him here, Robbie, I wrote this on the blog in my write-up this morning, the most exciting thing for me was not the quickness and the dynamism as a pass rusher off the edge. It was the fact that he could hold his point. He'd get an arm out there. He'd sort of one arm the tackle if he was lining up on the left side, one arm the tackle, read the play, read where the run was going, disengage, make the play. That's the kind of play that gets you on the field on early downs. You've got to be able to do that on first down versus the run if you're going to play early downs and not just be a specialist rusher or something, or play outside linebacker. So to see that, Robbie, was so encouraging. He looks excited. This edge looks exciting, because Nwosu's there and Taylor, they both got 9.5 sacks last year, whatever. To see Derek Cole and Boya Mafe playing the way that they are, and Tyrique Smith, who I want to come to. I want to come to Tyrique Smith. To see all of this, we've kind of gone from, oh my God, they're relying on Benson Mayo and Bruce Irvin for an edge rush for 2 years. And now they've almost got too many pass rushes, Robbie. It's great to see.
Yeah, he also had two batted passes down, which I really like to see him getting his hand up and knocking it down. So, Boya Mafe, I mean, we really liked him coming out. So the fact that when we got him in second, I think we were both really excited, and just it was really disheartening last year to see Bruce Irvin getting snaps over him and not really understanding why. I mean, I just think how good could he even be? He could even be even further along in this development if he would have gotten a chance to play last year. So I'm pretty excited to see what he can do this year. And you're right, the combination of him and Derek Hall, that's fun. That's fun, and we haven't even got to see everyone together yet. This could be a ferocious, pass rush. Still worry about the middle though. There's things on this defense that make me concerned, but I'm really happy with what we got in those guys.
Yes, we should talk about the interior because you have to. I don't think we're going to be able to do a stream when we're not talking about it.
It's going to be all season, but let's talk about Tyrique Smith first because I think you're right.
Yeah, we're gonna come on to the negatives. Look, there aren't many, but you also can't just pretend that they're not there. With Tyrique Smith, Robbie, I just thought fantastic. I thought he played well last week, and I thought that I was a little bit surprised at how much praise Mike Morris got on reflection. And I was a little bit surprised at how little praise Tyrique Smith got. So to sort of see him out there again today, he just looks so quick, agile. I love the way that he moves, Robbie. He looks bigger on the field than he looked at the Senior Bowl. So at the Senior Bowl, people cast their minds back. Tyrique Smith was the guy who spent the entire time fighting with Trevor Penning. Can you remember that? Like, Trevor Penning was the guy that we kind of didn't want him to take because he kind of looked like a fake tough guy. And the Saints took him in round one, in the middle of round one. And he was fighting with Tyrique Smith all week in Mobile. And Tyrique Smith looked quite small. He looked like quite a diminutive edge rusher / outside linebacker type. But actually looking at him on the field, I don't know if he's put on weight or whatever. He just looks bigger, Robbie. And he's very quick, very mobile. There's power in him there. You have to have him on the roster. Look, there's only one preseason game left. So there's not much left to learn now. I've seen enough, Robbie. I want to see this guy on the roster. Do not run the risk of him going somewhere else. This guy can play. And I don't know if I'm going to say this or not. Let me just sort of get through this point, then I'll say what I want to say. I'm happy with Nwosu and Mafe and Hall. And then I'm happy to keep Taylor and Smith and go, okay. And then your Levi Bells and people like that, you hope you get them on the practice squad and maybe they can become involved down the line because I think he's played well enough to sort of stick around to some extent. But if you're going to get rid of anybody, Robbie, I'd be ringing the phone lines and saying what you can get for Darrell Taylor and playing on the fact that he's got the sacks over the last couple of years. Because Taylor's not been healthy. He's not been out there. He's pumped up and ready and he knows it's an important year for him. He's got to go and deliver. He's got to deliver on his potential and he's a great athlete. And there's certainly some talent there, and you don't want to give up on him too much, but you have got a lot of options there. And if you have to lose one, and I wouldn't, Robbie, I'd keep them all, but if you have to lose one, I'd be sort of ringing around and seeing what you can get for that guy. He's sort of at the back end of his contract versus the front end of a lot of these people. You've paid him Nwosu now. So that's sort of where I'm at in terms of my thought process with this edge rush. What do you think? But, frankly, I'd keep them all. I'd keep all five of them.
Yeah, if you can keep all five, I agree. I agree with that. I don't really want to give up Darrell Taylor. I haven't actually even thought about that as a possibility. There's going to be some hard roster cuts, and there's going to be probably some surprises. But you talk about Tyrique Smith and the fact that that 2022 draft, and you talked about Boya Mafe never getting mentioned. Well, I mean, if Tyrique Smith hits as well, that 20 with Boya Mafe continuing. That is an absolute home run draft. The only person, let's see, who was the wide receiver we drafted in the seventh round? Bo Melton.
Bo Melton.
Other than that, he's the only player that didn't make it, right? So other than that, that's an absolute slam dunk of a draft. So I mean, yeah, he looks phenomenal. I think you have to keep him on the roster, and he led the team in tackles, which normally it's a linebacker that does that. This is just a great draft for them, and I really am excited about some of these younger guys, and hopefully they can build around these players because we're not done yet on defense. Obviously, we have some holes, but I like what we're doing. I definitely like some of these guys.
Yeah, it's a great point about how hitting on Smith would again just be another draft pick that has really worked out from that draft class a year ago. I sometimes, Robbie, you just watch a player and you think, I like this guy. And I'm sort of, where can they make a saving? I'm looking at the linebacker position here. So if you're going to keep an extra outside linebacker, maybe you can just get by with the way that they're using their linebackers, with Bobby Wagner, with Devin Bush and Jordan Brooks. 3 guys there. They did not carry a lot of linebackers a year ago. They basically just had Cody Barton and Jordan Brooks. So, can John Rattigan qualify for the practice squad again? Vi Jones, people like that, Ben Burke-Irvin, you've got them sort of on the ghost roster, but maybe carry one less linebacker and carry an extra outside linebacker. For me, that would be the way that I would go. And I suppose the only thing with Darrell Taylor is if you can't carry them all, or if maybe he could potentially be swapped for somebody who can play inside. I don't know. I don't even know what the market would be for him because of his injuries. If he could hit as well, you could have a great rotation. The problem is that only 2 of these guys can start, and you can rotate, but how much do you want to rotate? If one guy, for example, is you're paying Nwosu a lot of money now, you don't want him on the bench, do you? On the sideline, you want him out there. And if Boya Mafe is playing really well, again, you don't want him on the sideline, you want him out there. So you can only rotate so much, but I guess depth is also important as well. So there we go. I think on the offensive side of the ball, Robbie, to go back to that side, I thought Evan Brown had a good game at centre. I've kind of flicked through some of the stuff that he's done today, and I know that Curtis has been in the comment section on the blog talking about him. He looks as if potentially he's nailing down that centre spot. And Oliver Teamy's obviously been injured, and I don't think there's anything wrong with sort of letting him be the backup this year. Evan Brown had a good performance. I thought the O-line generally played well for the run game. I do want to talk a little bit about Charles Cross because he gave up an ugly sack, but we'll come on to that. I thought Abe Lucas played really well, Robbie. I think this is another thing, that people are, this is the luxury, the privileged position we're in that for so many years, there was so much hand-wringing about the right tackle position. Oh, who's going to play there, or what they're going to do there, or, got to find an option. And now the Seahawks have got a long-term, health-permitting 8-10-year starter at right tackle. And we should can we just take a moment to appreciate that? And unlike Charles Cross, and left tackle's a harder position than right tackle. By the way, I've just been distracted by a comment accusing me of being overly positive. You can't flip him win with you lot, can you? If you say nice things, you're too positive, and if you say we're going to talk about the D-line later, and then you're too negative. You can't bloody win on the internet, can you? Anyway, back to Abe Lucas. I know that left tackle's a harder position than right tackle, Robbie. You get a bit of extra tight end support. It's not the blind side. I just love the way that Abe Lucas plays. He hammers people. He absolutely hammers people. You get a base level of performance from him, which is really good. So he's going to be he's incredibly consistent and just level as a player. There's no sort of streakiness to his game. Do not underestimate that. Just the consistency of being able to play at this level all the time, so that on an average day, he's going to be here. On a good day, he'll be, or a great day, he'll be much higher. But you're never going to be down here. You're never going to have that game where it's just like, oh my God, what is he doing? He's just consistently there. But he's nasty and he's physical, Robbie. And that's how you want to play. Can we just spend a second embracing what a fantastic, amazing pick that was in the 3rd round? Nailing that position. And just what an addition to this offensive line. There are going to be fans if he'd have gone somewhere else, Robbie, we'd have been killing the Seahawks. Why didn't you he was right on your doorstep at Washington State.
Yeah.
He's here. He's with us. It's great.
Yeah. I mean, I was so excited when we drafted him. I was a lot of I don't reach out to a lot of people to try to do any sort of interviews or anything like that. But I was in conversation with Jessamine McIntyre, who she covers the Cougars, and she used to do Seahawks stuff. And so I was really trying hard to get her on to do a pod about about Abe Lucas, because I was so excited about it. And she just she responded back, like she was like very pumped. And, you saw all her tweets about it too. I think it's really just this guy is the fact that we got him in the 3rd, just an absolute steal of the draft. And I mean, you even had a 1st round grade on him, Rob. So like, this is a guy that to getting him where we did and just to watch him succeed is just, it's phenomenal. It's great to have, and great to have that position locked down. I know you're a little harder on Charles Cross than I am. I thought there was a couple plays that I was really impressed that he did, and there was also a couple that I was like, all right. But I think overall, he's not I don't think he's going to be that Pro Bowl left tackle. I mean, maybe he can do it. I think he looks a lot better this year, just as far as like how he physically looks. But I think really I think he does a serviceable job. I don't think he's ever going to reach that top tier, but I think he's good. I don't think he's great, but I do think he's good.
As soon as you brought him up, I'll just say what I think right now.
Go for it.
And then we can move on to something else more positive.
I just got distracted by the Cougars are going to win the Pac-4. Oh, great.
The Pac-4. Over the last, it's a throat clearing, but over the last year, we have occasionally on the blog talked about the strength of the Pac, the conference formerly known as Pac-12, and how crap it is. And I feel for the teams who are left, who've kind of been left behind. And I'm not a big fan, Robbie, of teams on the extreme West Coast playing Iowa or whatever, as a regular thing. But that conference has been so badly managed. And if there was ever somebody who should be paying back money, I can't remember. Is it Larry Scott, the guy who was the guy who ran that conference? What an absolute arse. The way that he has destroyed that guy with the TV deals and all of that. And, to end up in this situation, like all of the other conferences are clinging on, even the Big 12 that's lost teams to the SEC and stuff like that. They're muddling on, aren't they? They're getting other teams, most of them from the Pac-12. And for these poor 4 teams to be left, like I said, I'm going to the Apple Cup this year. I'm hoping to. It might be harder to get a ticket now because it might be the last ever one. So anyway, like I say, a digression, a throat clearing. Charles Cross. So when I scouted Charles Cross, I was, people kind of mistake criticism or mistake what I would say a fair reflection or a fair review as criticism. For me, Charles Cross was never a top 10 pick. He was always a player who deserved to go in the 25 to 40 range. And I wasn't the only one who thought that. As much as we kind of decried Daniel Jeremiah at times, he was saying the same thing. There were 1 or 2 other people in the media who had him rated in that 20 to 40 range. And that's where I think he belonged. There were some things to like about him, his footwork mainly, but there were some things, some strength concerns. I don't think he was a great athlete generally. I did not think he was a top 10 talent. I didn't think Ike Ekwonu was a top 10 talent either, for what it's worth. And people are questioning him for Carolina. He went just before Charles Cross. And I thought he was a guard. And it may well prove that he has to kick inside to guard because he's not getting good reviews during preseason. Anyway, I really worried about Charles Cross. One of the games, Robbie, that really worried me about Charles Cross was Ole Miss versus Mississippi State when Sam Williams had his kegs down in that game. It was hard to watch because it was either Sam Williams should be a top 15 pick or Charles Cross ain't a top 15 pick. Which one is it going to be? And Cross really struggled in that game. And to see the same matchup and see the same thing happening, Robbie, 2 years on or 18 months on, 20 months on is a worry to me. It's a worry. Because people have said, like Curtis has been at training camp and he said he looks bigger, he looks strong, he looks whatever. He's still getting plowed by a 261-pound edge rusher who he struggled with in exactly the same way in college. So he might be physically different, but the same issue is there. And you should not be pushed around. The top offensive tackles in the NFL are not getting shoved around by 260-pound pass rushers. Someone said Sam Williams is a good player in the comments. Absolutely. Sam Williams is a good player. I don't want him going into my top 10 left tackle with a one-arm strong arm and jolting him on his arse, and completely throwing him off balance. You have got to be, if you get beat for speed by a player like Sam Williams, that's going to happen sometimes. You can't be strong-armed by Sam Williams. He's 260 and you're, 310? It just can't happen. So that's a little bit of a worry for me. I hope, and there are better players than Sam Williams in your division. So I am a little bit concerned about that. And expectation has to be higher for Charles Cross because he was a top 10 pick, and it will be for Devin Witherspoon as well. You expect more from those kinds of players because they are drafted very early. So, people are now. People were telling me I was too positive 5 minutes ago. Now people are telling me it's preseason. Don't worry. I don't care whether it's preseason or not. If you are that snap happened, whether it's the season or preseason, that snap is out there, and you judge what you see. When in week 1 of the proper regular season, he doesn't. If someone's strong, if there's a strong arm, Robbie, into his chest, he doesn't suddenly gain. It's not like Madden where you play a little game and you get XP or whatever it is, and they've suddenly become a bit stronger or a bit better. You've got to be able to handle those situations. So to me, he still looks like the player that I thought he was going to be in the NFL. And like you said, that might be decent enough left tackle, but I still think there's a lot to prove there to justify that top 10 pick. And he did not grade very well last year. People are saying, it's great. The Seahawks nailed that one. He did not grade very well last year. So we need to see an improvement this year. I hope we see it.
By the way, this is completely off topic, but you brought up Madden. Did you see Tyreek Hill's comment on how he scouts teams?
No, I did not. No.
Oh my gosh, it was funny. He's like, I just played Madden before, and I see their agility ratings, and I see their speed, and then I attack them that way. Oh, it was hilarious. It was pretty funny.
I can honestly say that I've not played. I mean, I used to love Madden, and I have no idea why Madden. This is a real rabbit hole we could get into here. I have no idea why the PlayStation 2 Madden is better than the PlayStation 5 Madden. That is crazy to me. I used to love that game. Like I say, used to do. The draft was so cool. That franchise mode was amazing, and now it sucks because basically it's all about getting money off you on Ultimate Team. So anyway, there's plenty of videos out there on that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail, but I just thought it was super funny.
No, it's fine. On a more positive note, let's get it back to positive because I have to mention this comment. Someone has just said, and please, super chat if you want it because we'll get your comments up here more often. Someone has said, Charles Cross top 10 still learning. Well, Abe Lucas is a 3rd round and he's already at a very good level. And that's what I think that's the good point. If Abe Lucas can get to this level, you want to see it from Charles Cross now because he's a top 10 pick. I wanted to talk about Drew Lock, Robbie. Last week, I thought it was Drew Lock in a nutshell last week, is that he did make some plays, but every time he dropped back, I was looking through my fingers thinking, what's going to happen here? It could be a big play, could be a disaster. And he had that one play, and I know people have said, Hugh Millen watched it and he broke down the tape on KJR and he said, it wasn't as bad as... You can watch it for yourself. He turns down a wide open receiver down the middle and then turns to someone who was more covered and it was deflecting and it got intercepted. This game, Robbie, he was so much better. It was a pleasure to watch him in this game. I enjoyed watching him. I was actually disappointed when he went off and did not finish the half. I mean, if you'd have said to me a few weeks ago, Rob, you were going to be legitimately disappointed at not having to watch Drew Lock at 4:00 in the morning in a preseason game, I would not have believed you. But that's 4:15 in the morning or whatever it was when that was all going on this morning. I was legitimately disappointed that Lock went. I thought he looked in control. I thought he looked measured. He looked composed. I think composure is a big thing for him, Robbie. I think the game on this evidence was slowing down a little bit for him, which is a fantastic sign. There is absolutely no doubt that he's got all the physical tools you want. He's a far better athlete than people realize. His short shuttle times in college and high school were amazing. He can, on these boots and stuff like that, Robbie, I don't think people realize. And actually with Geno Smith, he is quite labored at doing this now because he's approaching his mid-30s. But when you try and get out of the pocket and get away from the rush, Drew Lock does it so well. He's such a good athlete. And did you see the pass to Noah Fant that when he was under pressure and off platform, threw that perfectly with great velocity? He can throw off platform with superb arm strength. He's got a great arm. And the throw to Jackson Smith-Njigba was outstanding. It was beautifully thrown. He looked in complete control. He looked like an NFL quarterback. And I have to say, Robbie, I couldn't help but think, I wonder if we'll see him this season. That thought popped into my head, and I'm not scared to go there. I don't mind thinking that maybe I wouldn't mind actually seeing what this version of Drew Lock looks like in a game, a proper game.
I was a little worried when there was the roughing the passer penalty that got on him. I thought maybe he got injured there, but yeah, he got up and shook it off, and I thought he played well. I mean, he was like 5 or 6, 7 on passes, so it wasn't a ton, but everyone was a dime. It felt like, and just great play all around. I mean, I'm really excited about him, and I think if Geno goes down, like, we have something to lock to at least. I'd like to, like I said last week, I want to see him play more with the ones because I feel like there's something there. I feel like he gets kind of a raw deal playing with the 2s and 3s. And we did see flashes when he was at Denver. It wasn't like he was horrible. His first year was pretty okay. I mean, like he showed signs. So there's a reason why they're keeping him around. And I think there could be an opportunity for him to maybe get in a couple games. We'll see.
Yeah, and I also think I was just trying to get the Broncos roster up here because I think that their receiving core has been quite overrated for some time. I liked Jerry Jeudy coming into the league. It feels to me like he's living off. I actually Googled Broncos Twitter rather than Broncos roster, which is the problem. I have no idea why I just did that. Anyway, there's the Broncos roster, so I can have a look at their receiving group. For some reason, Jerry Jeudy's been sort of living off the draft hype and the Alabama status, I think, for too long, and it's time for him to show good. I don't know if you saw it, Robbie. It was last week in preseason. Cortland Sutton just not giving any effort as well on a route. I've always felt that he was a little bit overrated. And then when you actually look at the rest of their receivers, there's not a great deal to get excited about there. And they had Albert O at tight end and stuff like that. Not great. And then I'm sort of looking at Seattle and seeing DK and Tyler and Jackson Smith-Njigba and the tight ends and the NFL's future best receiver Jake Bobo and people like that. And I'm thinking, I'd be interested in seeing what this guy looks like with 2 bookend tackles who are young and hopefully developing. In respect to everything I've just said about Charles Cross, I quite like to see this. And as it happens, I was just looking around the internet, Robbie, and sort of seeing, I was a bit bored earlier and was looking for things to read. And I went on PFF to see if I could find the grades from the game last night. And I couldn't find them. They hadn't been published yet, but I did find this article from Sam Monson. It was a PFF article on bold predictions for the NFC West. And this is his first prediction for the Seahawks. There were 3. One was Jackson Smith-Njigba will get the most targets. Tariq Woolen will be top 5 in completion percentage in a good way. I don't mean he's going to give up lots of passes. I mean, he's going to give up, amongst the 5 fewest in the league. But his first prediction was not a positive one. I'll read it to you. It says, Geno Smith turns back into a pumpkin. And he goes on to say, Geno Smith was one of the most amazing stories of the 2022 NFL season, earning himself a new contract with his performance as the Seahawks starter. Smith made 35 big-time throws and recorded a 77.7% adjusted completion rate, ranking him one of the best quarterbacks in the game in a variety of categories. The issue is that Smith also tied for the league lead in turnover-worthy plays at 29, and his grade was built largely on 3 extraordinary single-game performances. Outside of those games, Smith's PFF grade ranked 20th in the league, and he had more turnover-worthy plays than big-time throws. Of course, removing every passer's best game would impact their numbers, but few seasons were as top-heavy as Smith's last year. It wouldn't take much for him to regress into a more marginal starter from his 2022 level. Now, it's very easy, Robbie, to say something like, my prediction is Geno Smith's going to be average. But that is it's at least backed up with some thought that essentially Monson's argument is that Smith, a lot of the hype around Smith was based on 3 games, which really elevated his grade. And if you actually look at a lot of other games, especially towards the end of the season, there were a lot of turnovers and near turnovers. His play declined. And it's not beyond the realms of possibility that now he's been somewhat financially secured and has less of a point to prove, Robbie. I think that's, by the way, one of the reasons why they've really dangled the carrot with an incentive-laden contract to try and keep him in that sort of mind spell, that headspace, to really sort of attack this season. But it's not beyond the realms of possibility that he actually is just the player that we saw in the second half of last year, that he's not going to get, like, think about it, Robbie. That first game last season, it's flipping Denver and Russell Wilson in Seattle. He was perfect for a half. And then in the second half, he couldn't complete a pass. He couldn't get a drive going. So, who is Geno Smith? Like, people are just acting like, well, it's confirmed he's the guy.
Yeah.
But there are 31 to 40 million reasons why the Seahawks can't just assume that's the case. And if he can't prove it, Robbie, it would be a disservice on behalf of the Seahawks not to have a look at Drew Lock. Like, listen, I really hope Geno Smith plays brilliantly. He's got all the weapons. He's got everything he needs. I'm just saying that if yesterday's Drew Lock is more than just a one-off, if what we saw yesterday was signs of him actually settling down, and if Geno Smith can't recreate the magic next year, they need to at least have a look at this guy before they get into the offseason.
So I have a couple of thoughts on this. One, I mean, Geno Smith is capable of those top 3 games, right? We've seen it. He can do it, obviously. So there's a chance that he could have those games again. I think it's just like, do you want 3 stellar games, or do you want someone that's more consistent? You could take it out and the stats will be skewed. I get that. But he is capable of it, and we've seen it. And he has no reason not to this year. I think someone just said, like, he has no reason not to. There's no reason why he shouldn't be fantastic this year. He has all the weapons, right? The receivers, the running backs, tight ends. There's the line. I mean, there's no reason why he can't be great this season. And if he fails this season, then Geno reverted back to his old ways, and it's time to see what Drew Lock has. I think they'll probably give him a good chunk of the season. That we'd have to probably be pretty bad before we actually see Lock come in and actually take snaps away from him. Winning, I don't know, 1 or 2 out of the first 10 or something would probably do that. But like, that's something that I could see being back half of the season where there's no chance for making the playoffs before we actually see Drew Lock. And then, if there's an opportunity that maybe he does get hurt, which is also, you just said his age, he's in the mid-30s. It's possible that happens to me. I could see where Drew comes in and excels, and then they have themselves the conversation where, like, hey, like, maybe this guy just continues to play. Even if it's just like a stretch where, say, Geno's out 3 or 4 games early on, and if Lock is lighting it up, then you roll with a hot hand. But I don't know, man. This offense should be fun. There's no reason why Geno Smith can't do what he did last year.
Yeah, I agree with everything you've said there, Robbie. Just an interesting thought, and maybe I'm getting carried away. I concede that. I just really enjoyed watching Drew Lock play, probably for the first time ever. So,
well, I think what's exciting is he's young. He's someone that you got in the Russell trade. He's got a great arm. If he can put he's got the tools. If he can put it all together, you've got something there, and you don't have to waste a draft pick. You literally traded your franchise quarterback that you previously had for another one that came in. You had your buffer year with Geno, and then you have all the draft capital around him, and he's probably not going to demand a high salary. So, I mean, there's some very positives that that where you could want to see having Drew Lock being your starter going forward.
Just to tick off a few other things quickly, Robbie, before I've got a super chat, and I want to talk a bit about D-line. We both agreed Jackson Smith-Njigba just looks really good. We're just going to assume that
he's good.
Yeah, he's good. He's a good player.
Yep.
It's rare, isn't it, though, that like a first round pick, like, for example, Marzi Smith had a terrible game yesterday. It's not easy to identify who are the guys who are just going to seamlessly just slot into your team, but the Seahawks seem like they found one of those. They've got a really good value pick there, and good for them. It's because I've said for a few years, I think your offense is only as good as your third receiver, and the Seahawks now potentially have got a top third receiver. Some other guys who played well, good for Derek Cole getting a sack like that. Trey Brown, good for him to have a better game, including an interception, Robbie, and especially because Michael Jackson didn't have the best of games. It was good to see a different player, really sort of stepping up to the plate there in Trey Brown and having a better game. It was a consistent game. It wasn't just the interception. He had a better game overall. And I'm pleased for him as well, because it's been tough for him. He had that really good sort of rookie season. He's had the injury. It's taken him an age to get back. But at least there were some signs there of some progress. So good for him in that regard. We've had this super chat from Peter. Thank you, Peter. If you have a super chat, stick them in. It supports the channel and helps us out. Witherspoon and Cam Young concerns, Robbie. Witherspoon, he's in that place now where Pete Carroll's not giving many updates. Like with Ken Walker, he was like, yep, he's really close now. He's back, he can be back, yada, yada, yada. We're not getting that with Witherspoon. We're getting sort of the ominous Pete. We're getting, well, yeah, he's on his own at the minute and we don't know. We've just got to be careful there, week at a time. He's also not getting the reps. He's not getting the game practice. He's had this injury, Robbie, for months. This is dating back to draft season. These little niggly hamstrings. Look, sport is full of players who rely on speed. They get a hamstring injury and they're never the same. I am definitely not going to be negative about Devon Witherspoon. But I until he is out there, Robbie, practicing, and this is not a thing, I am going to have just that little bit of fear in the back of my mind. Because again, he's a top 10 pick, he's a top 5 pick. They need him to be better than just part of the roster. They need him to be really good. So that's that one. Cam Young, likewise, they're just not really talking about him that much. They're not giving much info on when he's going to be back. But they need him too. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute because we're going to get onto the defensive line because Pete said something yesterday that I just didn't make any sense to me. But I think Witherspoon's more concerning just because of the pick status. But both of them are, yes, to answer your question, Peter, I am a little bit concerned. What do you think, Robbie?
Yeah, I'm pretty concerned at this point, especially with Witherspoon. I mean, even with Cam, so at least with Witherspoon, yeah, he was a top 5 pick, but we have depth at cornerback position. I mean, if you need to bring Kobe Bryant back down to play, you do that. I mean, I know Mike Jackson got picked on yesterday, but I mean, I still think he's a good player and has an opportunity. And, there's been a lot of rave about him in training camp. So hopefully that was just a weird game or whatever, but it's not easy playing corner, I imagine. So just that's probably not the easiest spotlight to be on, but he still made plays for us last year, and I feel like he's going to be a good player. I think we just have depth at that position. And, you said Trey Brown played well as well. Cam Young, you look at it and you're like, we were going to rely on him a lot because we have nothing up front, and we need guys in the middle. And so I think for him to be injured and not be able to play, he's probably going to be a little easier to plug in and play though, when he does come back than it would be for Witherspoon. I think he needs more time. He could probably get picked on pretty early coming back. I think this week's going to be kind of telling for both of them if they're not back on the practice field and at least gearing up to play a little bit for the first for their first time ever and getting on the field in the last preseason game. I'd hate to see him get picked on or thrown into the fire, regular season. But that's just me. I don't know.
I'm with you. And, there's been a lot of sort of discussion as to whether or not it's right that he was sort of playing in the slot when he was practicing. I really don't care. I'm not bothered. If he's playing in the slot, Robbie, as long as he's playing, I'm happy. And his skill set, his ability to blitz, his ability to play the run, his ability to attack and play downfield, I think he's probably best served in the slot, actually. His sort of calling card is running. I actually think is not running up and down the field on the sideline. His sort of calling card is a lot better running across the field, undercutting crossing routes, reading sweeps and anything like that, attacking the backfield, hitting. He's not a conventional cornerback. So I'm not bothered if he plays the slot. And I think positional value in terms of the slot these days, in the same way that I think Jackson Smith-Njigba is such a vital part for the offense, I think nickel is such a vital part for most defenses these days. So if he's playing nickel full time, I'm not bothered. And personally, I don't think it has to be an outside corner or else with a high pick. I think that's a very important position these days. And if he plays nickel and some outside and moves around, that's fine by me. I just want to see him out there. Get him out there as a top 5 pick. I want to see him out there. So that is a little bit of a concern for me. I'm seeing people asking questions. It's like, no offense, we've only got about 15 minutes to go. If you have a question, stick it in the super chat. We will get to that. People are talking about Jalen Carter. All I'm going to say, people are saying, and this will happen if Witherspoon's not playing, and if Carter's playing well, this is going to be a very tiresome and boring, repetitive thing that will come up. No disrespect to anybody who's mentioning it now, but it will be a thing, and it will be quite boring. But what I will say is, I'm going to just repeat something that a very prominent person in the NFL said to me during this draft process when I was asking them about people like Jalen Carter, and they said, if you're willing to make one exception, you will end up with a team of exceptions. And that's the point. You will end up with, the Seahawks have had experience of this with Malik McDowell. They were the last team. This is why I was so passionate about this during the draft. They were the last team that was going to take Jalen Carter. I honestly believe that, and it proved to be the case. And I do. And if Jalen Carter goes on to be Aaron Donald 2.0, I don't care. The Seahawks were completely justified in the decision of not drafting him as far as I'm concerned. And that should never, ever be a point of hand-wringing amongst this fan base. So there we go. I do want to talk about, fun enough, about defensive tackle though, Robbie. Michael Bennett was exasperated during that game. I've actually quite liked that because if there's one thing, I don't think there's anything more nauseating than a home broadcast during a preseason game. What they do is they go and get these otherwise very professional broadcasters who don't have any partiality during a college football game or an NFL game. And then all of a sudden they get employed by a team for 3 games and the pom-poms come out and it has to be rah-rah Seahawks or rah-rah Vikings or whatever it is. And it is so, oh God, I can live without it.
It's really the Manning cam effect.
I don't know what it is, Robbie, but it's crap. And listen, it is painful listening to like the Seahawks being called we by the broadcasters or and do you know what the most frustrating thing is? And sorry, I'm going off on a bit on one here. The frustrating thing is for us in the UK. So yesterday, I felt very lucky because Game Pass chucked on the Seahawks broadcast, which means that you get the Seahawks interviews and the coverage from a Seahawks perspective. And it was slightly insufferable because it was so biased, but it was at least Seahawks bias. Sometimes I got stuck with the Vikings broadcast for the previous week and having to watch Justin Jefferson be interviewed while the game's going on and not paying attention to it and hearing them not know who anybody on the Seahawks roster is because they're deep into the roster and hearing we this and we that. It makes you want to just punch yourself in the face, especially when you're watching at 3:00 in the bloody morning like I am. That's when the game starts, by the way, not when it finishes. So it's really difficult. But then the football gods sent us a savior in the form of a 280-pound Michael Bennett, who has just come down from the football heavens, Robbie, and he has zero interest in towing the party line. If he sees something that's crap, he is going to tell you that it's crap. And he has really taken to the run defense and the tackling. When he sees something that we can all see it, we're all kind of think, those of us who are willing to be honest, we're all seeing it. And Michael Robinson's there and he's doing his best. Well, Michael, come on, it's preseason. And Mag, no, that needs to be better. And God bless Michael Bennett as far as I'm concerned, Robbie, because it's been a breath of fresh air hearing somebody just say it how it is. And that there is some improvement needed there.
Yeah, he's such a character. I love it. I actually have a buddy who met him one time on an airplane, and he was just he told me some funny stories about the conversations they had. But yeah, what a great guy, man. Just get him on there and just let him get after it and just tell it how it is. Like, why sugarcoat it? Like, the fans don't want that. Like, it was fairly annoying, the announcers, and I love that when he got on, he was just no holds barred and just gave it how it was. It's perfect.
Why is he always late? He's always like a
Michael Bennett timeline. Yeah.
He's like he just really rocks up when he can be bothered.
Yeah.
It's
just part of it's just part of his persona. That's just who he is.
So in the first game, I mean, look, I said I got the Vikings broadcast. Basically, it kept jumping between the two. I had the Vikings broadcast for about 75% of the game, and Seahawks 25%. It started with the Seahawks. And when he popped in, I thought, he's doing 10 minutes with them, or he's doing like a couple of series with them, and then he's going to go, or something like that, like a guest spot. But then he just was there throughout the whole thing. And then yesterday he was there for the whole game once he'd actually arrived. And they kept saying, when Mike B gets here, and I'm thinking, what's he doing? Like, I just had this mental image of him, like just turning up late, rushing in, or he like bumped into somebody he knows on the way up to the media room and got chatting, and then was like, "Oh, is that the time? I better go. I'm on the TV." Like it's to be honest, it makes it all the more better. This idea that he kind of just does what he wants, but he says it how he wants. I'm trying to dig the quote out here that I wrote down from the broadcast because he was talking about. Okay, here we go. He said, "More missed tackles, attacking the interior. The Seahawks need a Red Bryant type of player, a big body who doesn't care about making the play. He just wants to push a guy back. That's what this defense needs." And then there was a couple of times when he was quite exasperated by the run defense, Robbie. I completely agree with him. And Pete Carroll was asked after the game by Greg Bell, how do you feel about your D-line depth? And Pete kind of hummed and hawed and said, oh, that's why it's so important we've got Jaron Reed. And Jaron Reed's really good. And Jaron Reed, and I'm thinking, yeah, this worries me a little bit because it suggests that they are banking on Jaron Reed not only playing an obscene number of snaps this year, but that if he gets hurt at any point, Robbie, they are effed in a serious way because they're putting so much emphasis on him. And then Pete then pivoted and said, we hope that Cam Young's healthy again soon. And then he mentioned a player that, Robbie, I don't know anything about. He mentioned Austin Faoli. I can't, I'm butchering the name. But he just mentioned a random guy and they said, we're hoping to get him back soon and we need Mike Morris back. And I'm thinking, if Jaron Reed gets hurt, Robbie, 290-pound Mike Morris is not anchoring your D-line. He just isn't as a nose tackle. So that it worries me. I don't understand why there's not just another veteran who they've picked up between March and now who can just be even plan B to Jaron Reed. Just some depth there. Just someone who is 300 pounds at least. The Seahawks do not have another 300-pounder, as far as I'm aware, on the roster, other than the nose tackle guy. They basically the latest nose tackle guy they're giving a chance. And these guys seem to last 3 days, 4 days, and they get binned. So I don't understand it, Robbie. I don't understand why there isn't somebody else in there. And he's right. Bennett's right. They need just a big lump who will push someone back, who isn't bothered about TFLs and sacks necessarily, just wants to do a job, whether that's a nose tackle or somebody who plays like Bryant did as kind of like a large 5-tech, 1-tech, 3, whatever they are. Wherever they play, Robbie, they need some size. I bet this is the smallest D-line in the league. Everybody other than Reed is 280 to 290 pounds. And when I'm watching Dallas and Minnesota in the first half of both games, Robbie, someone was tweeting me earlier saying, the run averages weren't that bad. That's because Dallas's and Minnesota's fourth stringers could not run the ball effectively, which is not a surprise. And that could be down to the O-line and the running back as much as it is Seattle's fourth stringers playing against them. But Minnesota and Dallas early in the game ran at will. And when the proper stuff starts, I am worried that the Seahawks, you can have all the pass rushes you want, Robbie. If teams aren't running the ball, aren't throwing the ball, because they know they can get 6 yards of carry against you, they're going to take the pass rush away from the Seahawks anyway by running the ball.
Yeah, either that or they're going to have to load the box more with more players to try to stop the run, then which makes them vulnerable in the pass. Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's frustrating to kind of be in this position with, I think you said last week, people talking about, well, just wait until, people get cut and there'll be someone else. And like, how often do really good, interior defensive linemen get cut, and you're banking on maybe a team that's already knows they're not going to be very good, and letting a veteran go, maybe just to give them a chance to catch on to someone else. And then you got to get them up here with some money. So I don't really know if any of that's actually going to happen, but there's going to be something there. But again, what I'm really terrified of is that Jaron Reed does go down with an injury, and then this is where they make a rash, quick trade to try to get someone in, and then you're left, with a terrible trade that ends up not working. So, they're banking a lot on him, and hopefully Cam Young does come back and they're able to plug him in and things go well. And the guy that you just mentioned, I'm also not really sure of. So, I don't know, man.
We've got a super chat on this. M. Webb says, it feels like this roster is stacked beside the complete neglect of interior D and O-line. The core of both units being weak is scary. Thank you for that super chat, M-Web. If you've got a late super chat, you want to support the channel and the blog, bang it in. We're going to be on for another few minutes now. Robbie, I'm not worried about the interior O-line because I know there's not that sort of big splashy thing. There's not like a high pick, a first round pick or an expensive free agent in there. But I've liked what I've seen enough from the two centers to feel somewhat comfortable with that competition and Brown starting and Oluwatimi pressing and pushing and providing that depth. Joey Hunt on the practice squad. That for me seems okay. I thought that Haynes played well yesterday. I've not sat down and watched every snap, but watching the snaps where Seattle ran the ball well, I thought Haynes did a good job. I'm happy with Damian Lewis off the back of what he did last year. I do not think that interior is a massive issue. I think the Anthony Bradford pick, maybe he's not blowing anybody away in preseason and training camp, but I think that was a good pick, Robbie, and I like that option there for the future and for the depth. So I thought Leyland played all right as well, by the way. I thought he played okay as a guard yesterday. So I'm not worried about the O-line, but the D-line is a worry. There's just not the depth there. They just don't have anybody apart from Jaron Reed. Like, look, Draymond Jones, I don't know if you noticed the formations, Robbie. They look like a lot of four-man fronts, and that's fine. If they're not going to do the proper 3-4 stuff, I'm no issue with that at all. I prefer this way, and I think these guys can rush the edge. They don't have to play outside linebacker, so I'm happy with that. And if it is going to be Jaron Reed and then Mike Morris or Draymond Jones, or if they're going to play, maybe they'll play Draymond Jones as sort of an inside-out type guy, Robbie, like a Bennett, and play him off the edge, and then play Reed and somebody else in the middle, Cam Young, whoever. That's fine. But why haven't you not got another veteran defensive tackle in there? They've got $11 million in effective cap space. The Baltimore Ravens had half of that and signed Ronald Darby and Jadeveon Clowney in the last 10 days. So if the Ravens can go out and get those two guys, at some point in the last 6 months, Robbie, the Seahawks could have gone out and got a defensive tackle. Now, just go and get somebody. Like, if it has to be Sue, go and get somebody and have some depth.
Yeah. They did extend Brian Monet, right? For 2 years. I bet he's injured.
He's injured and he's expensive.
Yeah. 2 years, 12 or 14 million or something like that. Yeah. I mean, and so like if he comes back, that's another guy you said that we don't, I think he's like 340 pounds or something. So that's another big guy.
When's he coming back though?
But that's the thing, I don't know, right?
No word. I mean, as far as we know, he may not be back.
No, I know, I agree. I'm not saying I don't have any idea when he's coming back, but I'm just saying that's another guy that is on the roster. We don't know the status of what he could be, if he's healthy or not. So that's another guy. Maybe they're banking on him. I really don't know. Like, I'm just throwing out ideas that people that are actually on the roster. But I don't know. I don't know what their plan is. I mean, we do have a little bit of cap space now to go get somebody, but not enough that and I just don't. I mean, how many times has Sue been a free agent? And he's talked about wanting to come to Seattle. I think when he was a big free agent and whatever, but like that just never. Nothing.
I think it would have happened. I think it would have happened by.
It would have happened by now. I agree. Yeah. So I don't know.
But it's hard to sort of know. It kind of feels like they need to do something. That you can't just have one guy who's like 300 pounds on the roster at the start with maybe Mane will come back, but you look, like I say, there's Jaron Reed and there's a random nose tackle that they signed, I think, last week, and he's they're having a look at him, but they're going through these nose tackles like I say, the last 4 days they cut the one and they bring another one in. There has to be a bit more than this just to be able to function. And when Pete was talking about it almost sounds a little bit neglectful, and this is what I don't get. You have had. They could have had Shelby Harris. They could have had, they could have kept Al Woods. There's no reason why they couldn't have done those things. People have, said, and they're quite right to make the point, Robbie, that Al Woods maybe was breaking down. That's fine. But, I'd rather have a Al Woods who might break down than nobody right now. And it just seems like if the season starts and the Seahawks can't defend the run, I can well imagine us sitting on one of these after a game and going, well, it was flipping obvious they needed to do more than this. Like, why are we sat here having just watched that? Like, they should have come up with a way to fix that issue. And when you've got $11 million, and look, I get it. People are going, I'm seeing it in the comments section now, Robbie. People are saying John will get going when the cuts happen. And I've no doubt about that. I've no doubt they'll have a few defensive tackles. They've probably got a big board in whatever room they're in, full of defensive tackles who might get cut, who they quite fancy. They'll bring one in. They'll get some decent snaps. I've no doubt about it. But correct me if I'm wrong, Robbie. Have we not been here with several positions over the years where we're saying, just wait till cut downs. They'll get somebody. When's the last time they got someone on cut downs who had a decent impact? I mean, there was a quarterback, wasn't there? The guy who's with the Jets now, DJ. Oh
Reed?
My God, DJ Reed. He's probably the only one they've had in about 5 years. So, I don't know. I've not got that much confidence, and they have got cap space. So unless they're just trying to roll that over into next year because they want to save some money there and they're just playing that game, that's fine. I think they could have signed somebody else. Like Greg Gaines is on $3.5 million this year. Could they not have just gone and stuck him on the roster? And like now that would have given them $8.5 million or $8 million or $7.5 million or something like that right now. So yeah, I think that they should have done more than they did on defensive tackle. There should have been somebody else. And I think everybody was expecting somebody else when they started cutting everybody, and it just hasn't happened. So I'm a bit surprised by that. The final topic we're going to talk about, last chance to get super chats in if you're going to do it. The final topic, Robbie, I've seen a few people demanding it. So I'm going there very briefly. Jamal Adams, still not back. Jordan Brooks is back. Robbie, another week.
I don't even know what you want me to say. I have no idea.
Why is he earning $18.1 million? There's no. Yeah, I've said it once. I've said it a million times. Sorry to repeat, but if there are people who don't understand, if you turn to him and say we need to reduce your salary, and he says no, you say to him, well, we don't know when you're going to come back. We've not got value out of this contract so far. If we cut you now, it'll cost this. We'll save this. You will not get signed because you are not healthy. The chances are that Jamal Adams would be sat at home for the next 6 weeks at least, if not longer. And when he does get signed, he will not get signed. I mean, there is more chance of me winning Miss World next year than there is of Jamal Adams getting an $18.1 million contract on the open market. There is a zero chance of that happening. So you turn to him and go, we need to reduce your salary. You can incentivize it. You could say, if you get X sacks or X interceptions or whatever, however you want to do that, you can retain some of the salary, but you'll get it next year. So we want to incentivize this contract. But you have to be prepared to say, if you are not going to do that, then we are going to have to move on because we need that money. It's staggering to me that they are going to go into next year and their highest paid player is somebody who will not potentially take the field until at least week 7 because he's going to start the year on the PUP list. I think that's obvious. Yeah. And we have no idea, Robbie, how he's going to play because he's had a really unique injury that has ended careers. He may never be the same again. We don't know if he can stay healthy when he gets out on the field. I just don't get it. You have to lower his salary. And they could have done that and they could have kept Al Woods if they wanted, or they could have gone and signed somebody else, or they could have signed 2 other defensive linemen. I just don't get it why we're having these conversations about defensive line and he's still earning 18 point. If they'd have reduced his salary and just signed other players, fine. And they prioritize that, that's their choice. That's their prerogative, Robbie. But to have him on that much money and to be sat here as we are saying, why haven't they got a couple of other defensive tackles, even just for competition?
Yeah.
It's insane. And people will say, is there any reason why, because of the injury, they can't lower his salary? There is. Curtis has confirmed it, and he knows his stuff. There's nothing restricting you from doing that. So why has it not been done?
Yeah, I don't even have even a guess of an answer for this. I don't know. This is one of those kind of mystery things that I think they're just sitting on it for whatever reason.
Just say to him.
I literally have no idea.
Say to him, we'll give you 12. Right, so that's 12, okay? And we'll give you $1 million.
Well, maybe they did. Maybe they did, and he said no.
Well, then they caught him. I mean, if you go to him, say, we're going to give you 12, and we'll give you $1 million for every sack, which is a great deal, by the way. So if he gets 6 sacks, he will get the 18 million. That's not beyond the realms of possibility for an aggressive blitzing safety. And if you said to me, Robbie, that Jamal Adams gets 6 sacks this year, I'd go, that's a net win, given that he's currently not practicing. So you say to him, 6 sacks, $1 million a sack, but you get it next year if you get the 6 sacks. That's incentivized. It doesn't prevent you from cutting him next year as a post June 1st. If, for example, say it was 6 sacks, but he played crap or he got injured again, Robbie, you could still cut him, but you would have to pay him the money that he earned from the incentives. That's part of the agreement of this. So it's a bit of a gamble in that regard, but not a huge one. And, and then you save money this year to be able to give yourself the best chance. I don't understand why they haven't just done something like that, because 12 million is still a decent deal. There's incentives for him. He still gets the money if he gets the sacks. And if he's not prepared to do it, I'm sorry, you have to say thanks, but no thanks, because he's not going to get 18 million on the open market. He's not going to get anywhere near that. Robbie, there's even a chance he won't get signed this year because teams will just go, nah, you're not healthy. Don't want it. Haven't got the cap space. Not interested. You could go and sign up for a contender just before playoffs or something like that. That's it. I don't know why he's on 18 million. And I'll say this, Robbie, if he is on 18 million when that season begins, because then it's guaranteed for the whole year. So when that week 1 starts, if he's on 18 million and it's fully guaranteed, he better bloody be playing and making an impact. Otherwise, this horrible trade is going to look even, somehow they're going to make this trade even worse if they're paying him $18 million this year. He's crap or not contributing. And if they can't defend the run, that will be unforgivable as far as I'm concerned. That will be a huge error. And it will take the gloss off the great work they've done over the last 2 years, building up this roster with so much talent. If he is just taking up all that money, it'll be a blotch on their copybook.
Yeah, this is the biggest sore for them. Absolutely. I mean, this is the biggest. I think they know it. I actually think they don't know how to handle it. Like they want to prove that they were right, and then they want some alphas, and they thought he was, and he's just not. He's not what they expected, and I don't know. I'm over trying to guess the Jamal Adams stuff. It's frustrating, and at this point, I just like want to get through this season. So next season, I have a feeling he ain't gonna be around. So I said that last year too, though. So I could be wrong.
I think there's a bit of hubris. I think that Pete's been quite salty from the I think the Russell Wilson situation has set him, as I think it upset him. I don't think he'd ever necessarily concede that, but I think it really upset him that Russell was that desperate to force an exit. And I think that the criticism on stuff like the Jamal trade has hurt them as a team. And they are desperate to just to redeem themselves in some way, that if he can play to even a decent level, then they can turn around and go, it was just the injuries that prevented that trade from working. Otherwise, it'd have all been great. But that's just desperate at this point. You can't do that at the expense of your team. And it's the ultimate team game. And I really, really hope they're not giving up 5-6 yards of carry after the first 3 weeks of the season, while Jamal Adams is on a sideline, waving a towel, getting the fans into it on 3rd down, with no sign of a return anytime soon, because that will really piss me off. Anyway, Morgan says, let's talk about Jackson Smith-Njigba and his sweet feet and hands. We did touch him in briefly. The thing is, Morgan and Robbie, there's not a great deal to say other than he looks freaking great. I mean, and as we said earlier, he is that rare find of a player who just looks naturally gifted. He's not the quickest. I mean, he'd have scored a touchdown last night if he was, tenths of a second quicker, because he was caught from behind. Was it Bennett going, that's six? Oh no, it's not. It's just up to the one. That was funny in the commentary. But apart from that, and that's the only reason he lasted, Robbie, is because of the speed. It's the only reason. And maybe the injury from last year, but he just looks like he was born to be in the NFL. Parsexon said it was not said anything. Actually, just giving us a $1 super chat.
No, it's underneath it.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I'm spending a book to hear your thoughts on Matt Gottle. I mean, he's the nose tackle we've kind of been semi-referring to as the guy they've recently brought in.
Yeah.
I think I'm right in saying that. Look, he's not a player that I think anybody... Yeah, so they signed him 3 days ago, Robbie. And this is the thing. They've signed nose tackles. They spend 3 or 4 days with Seattle and then they move on. And it was what Robert Cooper, who played last week, and people were going, hey, he did okay.
Yeah.
And then he was cut again for the second time. And then last night, people were going, Matthew Gottle played okay. But by Tuesday, he might be cut. And they've just signed another defensive lineman today, who's, I think, 290 pounds. Is it Mitchell? Dimitri Mitchell or something like that. They cut Ferguson, the defensive end, and signed him, which is worrying, Robbie, because I think that means that Mike Morris is probably going to miss a bit of time again this week.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've not studied Gottle. I don't know. I know John Schneider said that they're happy to plug nose tackles in and hope for the best. If they've played well in college at that position, they think it translates. That's fine. But Robbie, I just hoped for more than this. Just if they just had like Greg Gaines in there and somebody else, like just a big lump that they signed as a cheap veteran, I think we'd be talking about that they've pretty much got every box ticked. Because they've got an interior pass rusher in Draymond Jones. That's the thing they've never had, really. A really dynamic interior rush. They've got that, Robbie. Now they just haven't got that meat and potatoes depth to plug lanes.
Yeah, I think these guys that they're bringing in, they're just trying to find a diamond in the rough. Someone that they can feel comfortable getting out there that might hit. And, this is why these guys keep cut and get signed and bring them in just to see what's out there.
Yeah, anyway. Look, and listen, I'm preparing everybody now. It's going to get, if things are great, if the D-line's not an issue, we'll be talking about it because we're saying, that's a pleasant surprise. And if it's bad, we're going to be talking about it. But be prepared because it's a talking point. It's going to be a talking point one way or another. It's just part of the discussion of the team. There's lots of things to talk about with the team. It can't always be positive. And as we've learned today, when you are positive, someone will tell you you're being too positive. Anyway, there we go. Robbie, always a pleasure. And I don't know what we'll be able to do next week because I have no idea what I'm basically going to be in the middle of nowhere in France. So I'm not sure what the deal will be, whether we can do a stream or I might have to just write an article or just video myself.
We'll get circle back after week 1.
Yeah, when I get back, we can maybe get together before the season begins, and then that'll be it, Robbie. We're nearly there.
We're almost there. It's exciting.
It's about 20 days away now, something like that. This has just dropped in right at the last minute. How do you feel about the defensive tackle draft class next year? I'm just getting into it. I have got a long list of players that I'm trying to dig it up for you now. So I've got a long list of players to watch, and I'm getting through it. Chris Jenkins, I've watched Michigan. He's the one who's on Bruce Feldman's freaks list, and he's getting a lot of attention. I've already watched Tyler Davis at Clemson. I've watched the Texas Tech guy. Look, there's a long list of players. People are saying it's a deep class, but I need to watch through it, and I would just urge some caution on that. So sorry, Frank. I really appreciate the $9.99, but trust me, there's going to be many blog articles talking about defensive tackles, and I'm sure videos over the next few weeks. You will not be shortchanged. You will get an answer to that, I promise, over the coming weeks in extreme detail. Because as we enter the season, defensive tackle and quarterback is going to be my focus for the college football season at the moment. So I promise I will have a better answer for you down the line. But thank you for the super chat, and thank you to everybody who sent the super chats in. Really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody who's watching. Great numbers again. Look, stick with us because we're going to be doing these after every regular season game. Lots of videos on the blog during the season, Seahawks and college football related. SeahawksDraftBlog.com for more analysis. I've got some notes on there from the game yesterday if you want to go and read those as well. Enjoy, like the video, comment because it helps the algorithm, subscribe. I think I mentioned everything. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Till next time, bye for now.